Welcome back, Red Devil sports fans, to yet another edition of the Speak of the Devils podcast. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Sammy St. Jean and, of course, Dom Fusco. Today we're going to be doing something like a little bit like the old days. We're going to go through our NFL draft quarterback rankings. First, we're just going to do our top five. Who do we think is going to be the most successful in the NFL? And then we're going to have an interview with our very own Michell Fisher in the admissions office. And then after that, we're gonna go through a little special segment that I'm actually gonna save as a surprise for the rest of you guys. So, boys, how we doing?
Doing well. Ready for this episode. Should be good.
Feeling good. Ready to roll. Excited to talk some Dickinson sports, some QB talk, a little draft leading up to the draft talk here, and then a fun segment at the end. So stay tuned for that.
Good stuff. Last time I did one of these lists, it didn't end up so well for me. So we'll see how this one goes. I think I have an interesting list. But Sammy, how do we want to do this? We want to go with our number 5 first, or we want to go with our number 1 first?
Let's go 1 to 5 because we probably all have the same one.
Okay. So, yeah.
And just so everyone knows, this isn't like who we think is the order we're going to think. It's long term like projection, like who we think is going to do best long term.
All right. Well, then, Sammy, start us off with your number 1, and then we'll go Dom, and then we'll go me.
Trevor Lawrence, not explaining it.
Yeah.
No reason to explain it.
Mm-hmm. See, my number 1 is not Trevor Lawrence, and my number 1 is actually Zach Wilson. My number 1 is Zach Wilson, and I was a big Zach Wilson hater for a long time, just because he plays BYU. He plays for BYU. They're not in the conference. They don't have a tough schedule. They're just a weird team. And I was like, there's just no way like a BYU quarterback is going to be decent. Why is this guy projected to go top 5? And the more and more I studied him and watched him, I think he's got really good poise in the pocket. I think he's got a really good football IQ. I think he's crazy. I think he's, besides maybe Justin Fields, the most like athletic of the bunch. So I do think Zach Wilson, which it looks like if he goes to the Jets, if the Jets can surround him with a good offensive line and some weapons, which, they're the Jets, so we'll see. But I think I do trust Joe Douglas, who's their GM. If he's able to get Zach Wilson some weapons, I think he can be a pretty solid quarterback down the line.
All right. Yeah, that's an interesting pick. We all knew that Dom was going to come out with some crazy list. So
I know he was going to disagree with whatever Sam and I say.
Yeah. So I'm going to go Trevor Lawrence, just because that's what everybody's saying. Everybody except for Dom. So I'm going to go with Trevor Lawrence as my number 1.
Yeah, so my number 2, and part of what I did with this list and thought about it is who's actually going to be drafting this team, like this kid, player. So I have Mac Jones at number 2. And 1, because I think the Patriots are going to try and trade up and get him should he not be drafted in the first 5, because some teams are like thinking about getting him early. But I also was just very impressed with I saw him at the Senior Bowl. Like he came out, performed, not in the Alabama offense, and he, showed out. And I think that was the evidence I needed to like believe in him, not in just the Nick Saban setting, because we all know what happened with AJ McCarron. So Mac Jones, number 2.
Yeah, I also basing it off of who I would think would take the quarterback. So number 2, I'm actually going with Trey Lance, assuming that he's picked by the Broncos, which there's a mock trade that the Broncos are going to move up to number 4 and take Trey Lance. And I like that. And I really think that Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, and whoever else they can add, they have some other young talent there on that Broncos offense, even though they were not a good team last year. But they were just missing a quarterback to get those guys the ball. If they can get KJ Hamler and Jerry Jeudy the ball, and Trey Lance, who's a guy who doesn't really ever turn the ball over and just kind of has this confidence and swagger about him that I like, I think that he can have a pretty solid career there. Granted, it is a tough conference, the AFC West, but, we'll see.
I'm going to go with Zach Wilson at my number 2. Really liked what I've seen on his pro days and stuff. I was also very, very skeptical of Zach Wilson. because of the whole BYU thing. They're not in a conference. They don't have a tough schedule and whatnot. Pretty much everything Dom said for putting him at number 1, but I'm just going to be putting him at number 2.
Yeah, so my 3 is Zach Wilson, and the reason he's at 3 and not 1 or 2 is because when I watched him, and from what I've read, the biggest complaint about him is that he just holds the ball in the pocket too long. So that'll be something to keep. That's a big adjustment you have to make from the college to the NFL level.
My number 3 is Trevor Lawrence. I can only dip him down so far. One thing is I don't know. I just as much as he won and as great as he was, there's just something about him that just doesn't strike me as like great NFL long-term quarterback that everybody is projecting him to be. I don't know. He just doesn't seem like he has that it factor to me, and only time will tell. And I still think he's going to have a good career. I just don't think he's going to. You can't pencil him in the Hall of Fame like a lot of guys are doing right now. So that's why he's my number 3 on this list.
All right. My number 3 on this list is going to be Mac Jones. Pretty much for the same reason Sammy had him at number. What did you have him at, number 2 or number 1?
Yeah, number 2.
Number 2. Okay. So yeah, I loved watching Mac Jones, and I know that everybody says that he was in the Alabama offense and he has one of the best college offenses ever. He's still got to put the ball there for those wide receivers. Like he's still got to drop those dimes and they make it look easier, sure, but he's still got to put the ball there. And I think that he did a fantastic job with Alabama this year, and I think that it's going to translate over to the NFL pretty well. He played with pretty much an NFL roster already. So I think he's going to be fine. I think he's going to be ready.
Yeah, just to add on what you said, I also that like if the Patriots were to trade up and get him, say around like the 10 to 14 pick range, he goes from Saban offense to a Bill Belichick offense, and I think that would be pretty much a seamless transition for him. Mm-hmm. So my 4 is Justin Fields. So first point, I hate Ohio State. So I just it's not that I hate Justin Fields, I just hate Ohio State. But one thing I've been reading a lot lately too is just like a lot of questions of his work ethic. And there's been people that have defended him, obviously, as head coach and stuff like that. But something to keep in mind. And then there's the question of like competing without an elite defense, because I mean, so you can ask the same question for Mac Jones as well. But Ohio State had like the best defense in the entire NCAA level, the Division I. So I was thinking, Justin Fields without that top level defense. And, obviously he was in a similar situation to Mac Jones where he just had a ton of talent around him. So I think there's going to be something to prove for him, because I am what you would consider a doubter right now.
Yeah, my number 4 is Mac Jones. And I actually really think I've always been a Mac Jones fan. I think all year people constantly just find reasons to pick on him and tell him, say why he's not going to be a good quarterback and why, Alabama quarterbacks never pan out. It's like, it's a system, whatever. But you got to think he also sat at Alabama behind Tua, behind Jalen Hurts. And he learned from those guys. And when it was finally his time to take the reins, like, he just sat back quietly, learned, worked on his craft. And when it was time to shine, like he did his thing. And I think, it actually scares me if he goes to New England, because I think him and Belichick are going to, I think not he's saying he's going to be the next Tom Brady, but I think he can have a really good career if he ends up with New England. I think his potential drastically increases if he does end up in New England. But I think people underestimate what he can do. And, like you've seen with Peyton Manning, with Tom Brady, they weren't the most strikingly physique gods that a lot of these quarterbacks are nowadays. No, they were smart. They did their job, and they won games. And I think that's what Mac Jones, that's all he did this year in his year of playing. So I think he could be pretty good if he's surrounded by the right pieces.
I totally agree. At my number 4, I'm going to go with Trey Lance. I actually got to watch Trey Lance in person at the national championship game 2 years ago because my cousin plays football for JMU, and we went down to Texas and watched him play. And Trey Lance absolutely shredded them. It was unreal, and he was a true freshman. And right then and there, I was like, this guy's gonna be going in the first round of the draft. I don't care if it's FBS football or FCS football, whatever it is. I'm in yet another sick year this year. Also, I would take Trey Lance 10 times out of 10 over Justin Fields. I just think he would pan out. I think he's going to pan out way better, especially if he lands in the right spot. And I think Denver would be perfect, Dom. But yeah, that's who I'm going with at my number 4. And I guess I kind of already spoiled who I'm putting at my number 5. But yeah.
Yeah. So, well, but back to what Dom was saying, I also think Mac Jones could do really well in San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan. Something about Kyle Shanahan and just the way he's very creative on offense. I think he could make Mac Jones work as well. Just kind of how he did with Jimmy G, even though Jimmy G, the first 2-3 years before his injuries really kicked in, he did very well for them. So my 5 is Trey Lance. And this one's kind of, you don't really trust him because of the level a little bit that he was playing at in college. He only played 1 game last year. And I also have a thing, and Carson Wentz is going to have to prove this as well, where I don't trust North Dakota State quarterbacks beyond 1 successful year. So I need some evidence to believe in quarterbacks that played at North Dakota State.
Yeah, sorry. My number 5 is Justin Fields, and I don't know. I am impressed with what he did against Clemson, but I just don't know if he's going to have the longevity to stay in the NFL, like with all the hits that he's going to take, the way he scrambles out of the pocket. So, who knows? He's kind of like one of those toss-ups for me. He could end up having a really good career, I think, or he could end up, just falling off pretty quickly. So we'll see with Justin Fields. I really liked him in high school. He was on QB1. I watched that, and he ended up going to Georgia, transferred to Ohio State. Had a really good career there, but what worries me was when he played a team like Northwestern and could barely get the job done. And it was like every game he was very inconsistent. So I think a key for him is going to be, putting on some more weight, being more comfortable in the pocket, being more consistent, and not just having these incredible games and then doing absolutely nothing. So that's him. And my honorable mention, I think Kyle Trask is going to be solid. I know he's dropped a lot down into like the mid rounds, but I mean, I watched him at Florida and the dude was just a touchdown throwing machine, and he's got a good build. I think he's got a lot of potential, and I think that's going to be a steal if he falls to even like the 3rd round for whoever gets him there.
Yeah, I actually completely forgot about Kyle Trask, so that's a good honorable mention to have. My number 5 is
Justin Fields.
I might. I really don't like Justin Fields. I really don't. I'll keep Justin Fields at my number 5 just so we can talk about it. I think that Justin Fields is Jameis Winston reincarnate. I really don't like his game. I don't think he's the most consistent passer like everybody says he is. I see him like getting bailed out by his wide receivers a couple times. Yes, he had a sick game against Clemson where he was playing with broken ribs, and I commend him for that. I gained a lot more respect for him for that. But I do not like his game. I know that he's very fast, he's very athletic, but there's just something about him that screams Jameis Winston to me, and Jameis Winston sucks. So that's why I'm putting him at 5.
I know something about him screaming RG3 to me, so that's kind of the vibe.
That's worse. That's
worse. But just because Don gave a good honorable mention, so I'm gonna give a shout out to Ian Book, someone from Notre Dame that I think could possibly turn out to be a diamond in the rough.
There you go. All right. Well, I guess that will do it for our quarterback draft segment list thing. So that was a good talk that we had there. We're gonna move right along into our interview with Michell Fisher.
Healthy, not boring. That's not just the motto of the Grazery, but is also their promise to you. Visit the Grazery today and indulge on fresh Mediterranean-inspired salads, sandwiches, and soups, among other great options on a menu that serves both breakfast and lunch. Eat in or take out. No reservation needed here, so hurry on down to 156 West High Street, just yards from the campus, and enjoy a fresh and feel healthy meal today.
All right, well, welcome back, Red Devil sports fans, to the interview segment of Speak of the Devils podcast. Today, we have one of my favorite people on this campus joining us today. It's none other than Michell Fisher. Michelle, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
Good. Just to kick us off, just tell us what your job is in the admissions office and what you do. Take us through like a day or something.
Okay, sure. So my official title is Visit Programs and Services Manager for the Office of Admissions. I work exclusively with the tour guides. I do work with coaches. The day-to-day visits I do mostly, and then I assist Molly and Nora in our bigger program days.
So Michelle, go ahead, Sam. You're good.
I was just going to ask what exactly you do with athletics. You talked about how you just briefly mentioned how you work with coaches and on the day-to-day visits. What is that process like?
There's a couple things that if a coach has a recruit that's coming and they want to schedule an info session or a tour, I work with them that way. But then I also will build events for them when they're doing larger recruiting events. Like football this weekend is doing, obviously not as large as normal because of COVID, but they're going to have an event. I'll be at the front desk and checking people in, that type of thing.
So Michelle, what are your favorite parts of the job? And then what are some of the most challenging parts of the job? Because that's a very unique title. And so to somebody who may have not had as much conversation with you as me or Sam has, what are some of those things?
Well, I can also, probably the tour guides are my most favorite part of the job, being with them, but they can be a little bit frustrating sometimes. No, not you, Dom. But I've been here for 10 years. So I've seen a lot of kids go through, and now I'm attending tour guide weddings. I've gone to different events for one of our former tour guides graduated from the State Police Academy, and he invited me to that. So it's really neat to see kids come in as actually prospective students and then seeing their path, and they still keep in touch with me, which is my favorite part. Okay.
Very cool. So just to let's skew it back to Dickinson Athletics a little bit. What do you think separates Dickinson Athletics from other schools that you've seen?
I think probably the biggest thing is that the coaches support the student athletes by encouraging them to go study abroad. When prospective students come in and hear that, they're surprised, but Dickinson student athletes, the coaches want them to have the full experience, study abroad, internships, things like that. So they're not just athletes here.
I would go even further too to ask, what specifically do you tell students or athletes that come here that are considering other Centennial Conference schools? Because a lot of the Centennial Conference schools, if you look at them on like a blank slate, take away their logos, they look very similar.
Well, I think the two biggest things that we have going for us, that separate us, is our study abroad program is one of the best in the world, but also the organic farm. Not a lot of schools have that. And the farm is part of our, dining hall, social setting, science experiments. That's like a separate campus that we use. And I don't think any of the other ones have an organic farm at this point.
Is there a particular event, whether it be sporting or not, that always sticks out to you, first thing that pops into your head when you think like Dickinson Athletics or not even Dickinson Athletics, but just an event where you saw the community come together that really just kind of embodied the Dickinson community and everything that we value and preach and try to practice?
I was about 4 years ago when the men's basketball team made the Elite Eight. That was pretty exciting, right? I'm trying to think how many years ago. So that was one of my favorite. I was really close to a lot of that players on that team and the players' families. So that was cool. I also just like how all the student athletes and the community support each other. going to each other's, well, now we can't, but going to each other's games and things like that. I love to go to I've been to your football games. Haven't been to a baseball game yet, Sam, but maybe next year, right?
Brutal.
I was
Brutal.
planning on it, right?
Yeah. So I'll bring it back a little bit to the kind of an admissions process question.
Mhm.
So what kind of happens when a coach comes to you and says, I want to have this kid like on my team? What's that process like?
Well, we have 2 athletic liaisons that are on the admissions staff, Molly Bogle and Mary Nolte. Mary actually ran cross country and track here. So she's an alum, she's an athlete. So they go through a recruiting plan with each coach. And then if they like someone, they want to invite them. We do almost like a pre-read, because a lot of our athletes come through that early decision binding agreement. I would say probably more than half do. So we do a pre-read so we don't waste anybody's time. Does this kid have a strong transcript? Dickinson is a tough school, so we don't want to ever admit somebody that is not going to excel academically as well. So we do that. They do different recruiting events as juniors, and depending on the sport, like lacrosse and baseball, that's like a spring sport. So they really start recruiting early, whereas the basketball might be a little bit late based on when the season is. So they meet with them, they pick that, and then they apply, usually early decision, and then they go from there. And so many times the coaches meet with the players before us, or the recruits before us. So very rarely do I have, in 10 years I've been here, one kid came for a regular admissions visit, said he was interested in meeting with the lacrosse coach. And he actually was a kid that, do you remember Zach Blumenstein?
Mm-hmm.
So he had verbally committed to Johns Hopkins, but really wanted to be into political science, which was Dickinson. So he came, mentioned that he was interested in talking to a coach. I called Webby. Webby heard the name, and I think he ran down from the client because he was so excited about that. But that being said, then you have a kid that might be interested in playing basketball, and you ask him where he played AAU, and he doesn't know what AAU is. So that's not exactly I think the biggest misconception is that we are so competitive, and it's tough. Our athletes are tough, and the competition is tough. And I don't think it's just a step from high school that maybe some people think that is, like with Division III.
No, that makes sense. I also want to ask too, you mentioned you work really closely with tour guides, and that's something that, students and also athletes can become. So I would say, what is the process like to become a tour guide, and what does that entail for, students and also athletes?
Well, you can ask two of my best tour guides are sitting here on this panel, but normally we have a table at the activities table. There's an application process. The LibCaps have intern and an exec board, and I work with them, and we do interviews, ask like group questions, and then we select people. Usually we have about 80 people on roster at any given time, with like seniors graduating, kids going abroad, things like that. But I'm happy
Sorry. Go ahead.
We have so many athletes. Soccer, football, baseball, softball, women's lacrosse, men's lacrosse, almost every sport. I just got a squash player with our last recruiting, so I'm excited about that. And that's nice for the because the tours are, you guys have training, and I know that Dom, you probably, I don't know if Coach Hansen does this with you, Sam, but if we're not open, they can offer a tour, for admission. So, and they give the right information.
So Michelle, you mentioned that you've been here for 10 years.
Yes.
What have been some of the things that have kept you at Dickinson for 10 years? Because a lot of times you hear about people in college admin or higher education administration who tend to move around, bounce around job to job. What's kept, and you've had different roles at Dickinson, but what's kept you around for so long?
Honestly, I love the job. I love the tour guides. To be perfectly honest, the first couple years, I have 2 children that graduated from different universities and colleges, but we have a tuition exchange benefit. So I was able to get that for them. Oops, sorry about that. So we were able to do, my kids went to school tuition free, but then, the population of the college is diverse and everything, but the tour guides are always seems to be, in my opinion, the best of the best. Very rarely do I have to deal with somebody that gets in trouble or things like that. Everybody wants to be here. It's a volunteer organization. So I really enjoy it. And I get 2 weeks off during Christmas and all that stuff. So, yeah.
That's very good. I'm out of questions. Sammy, you got another one? Or you good?
Yeah, I guess I had two. One's more or less just a knock on you two, but the first one is going to be, what happened. So for kids that are applying to Dickinson or just any school, a lot of them, hit the submit button on their application. They have no idea what is actually happening in the admissions process after that. Can you give us just a brief idea of what exactly happens once the kids finally submit something? And
yeah, I can tell you. I mean, I've only worked at Dickinson, so this is Dickinson specific, but we have about 12 regional counselors from the various areas, and they do paired readings with someone else, and then they go into committee and they determine, who would be a good fit, who would not be a good fit, things like that. And I can tell you, they read every single application. So it's not like they put. I went to Penn State, so I have heard that they put all the applications in and they know who's automatically going to get in and who's automatically not going to get in. And then they look at that middle, whereas Dickinson looks at everything, every single application.
Very good.
All right. My last question for you, Michelle. This is going to be a tough one, but dude, give it your best shot. What is your top 3 eateries in Carlisle?
Well, I'm going to say Spoons.
Yeah, I'd say
I knew that was coming right off the bat. Yeah.
Yes.
That's by default.
I love Spoons. I love Issei.
Thank you.
That's Sammy's. Yeah, that's Sammy's.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then I live right around the corner from Red's Barbecue. So we get that a lot. So those are
good.
my 3. Although
I had that for the
amazing.
first time last week.
You're kidding.
Yep.
No.
So good.
Red's hit's different. I miss it.
I like the Grazery too, but you asked me my top.
Oh, good.
We are sponsored by the Grazery.
Yeah.
You can feel free to give them an honorable mention, but
Okay,
I think
yes.
that's fair enough. Michelle, thank you so much for coming on the show today. We really appreciate you.
Hang on, I gotta get a little tough. This is the toughest question she's gonna have to answer because you're both right here. If you had to pick one tour guide to keep, which one are you taking between these two right here?
Ooh.
I've been around longer.
Yes, he has.
Quality over quantity.
Like fine wine. I'm like fine wine.
Sam's parents are both alums. Sam's parents are both alums. There's, I can't. That's
a good argument for both sides.
Yeah. I don't know. They're both from Philly area. So yeah, tough. How about I just say I would take Taylor Iron over all of you?
Oh, give me a break.
Wow.
Give me a break.
Wow. That's a shot in the heart right there. But thank you again, Michelle. Even though you just broke both of our hearts, thank you very much for coming on the show. We really appreciate you.
Okay, thanks, Michelle.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye. Stay safe.
Complex is something no coach or athlete wants to deal with, which is why every team aims to keep schemes and execution simple so success is easy to achieve. That's the game plan used by the Grazery right here in Carlisle. Simple ingredients that are fresh, healthy, and above all delicious. Healthy, not boring food that is not just good, but good for you. Made from only the healthiest and simple ingredients. So come in today and enjoy a great meal made simple at the Grazery, located at 156 West High Street, Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
All right, welcome back, Red Devil Nation. We want to thank Michelle Fisher again for coming on. She was absolutely fantastic, and she, like I said before, she's one of my favorite people on this campus. So we have something a little bit different for you guys today, and I think it's going to be pretty fun. And I really want to get everybody involved. I want to hear everybody's thoughts about our picks for this, and I want to hear your picks too. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be picking a coach from Dickinson College's staff who we think could jump on the field or jump in the pool or jump on the track or whatever and play and compete in the Centennial Conference right now. So, Sammy, who's your pick?
Go with Coach Chris Fernandez, a former guest on the podcast. I think he could compete in both squash, and I think he could possibly compete in baseball as well.
Baseball, totally 100% baseball as well. Yeah, I agree. That's a great pick.
And then I also had a quick shout out to Coach Hayes from women's basketball. I feel like she could compete as well.
Mm-hmm. Dom, who you got?
I actually have to give a shout out to one of my coaches, Coach Glennon, who, if you've ever seen him, he's out pushing the sleds and just working out like a maniac on the field, like before our practices, after our practices. He's a defensive coordinator. He's the special teams coordinator. He coaches us at safeties, and just an absolute beast, and could definitely beat up the majority of the guys on our team. And that's no discredit to anyone on our team. Coach Glennon is he's in his 30s, and he still looks like he could suit up and play with all of us, and definitely gets us all jacked up before games and practices and everything. So Coach Glennon is a beast, and I think he could strap up and play pretty well right now.
So I put a lot of thought into this because I really wanted to get this right. I was originally going to go with Coach Fernandez, like Sammy said. But I have a few in mind. I think Coach Fernandez is the smart and safe pick. But there's just something about Coach Jorge Chapoy that I saw on the field the other day, and he's a former guest as well. And every time I'm walking the lift to go to the dirt, and men's soccer is always out there, and I see him doing the drills with the squad, and he's got the most insane touch I've ever seen in my life. He's out there. I think he would be first team all Centennial Conference in just in the Centennial Conference right now if he hopped on the field, was playing midfield or playing striker or something. But he has got insane touch with the ball. I see him doing the drills with the squad, and yeah. But I've also seen Coach Fernandez take ground balls at shortstop, and he is silky smooth in the 6-hole. So I don't know. But I think I'm going to have to go with Coach Jorge Chapoy.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, I also there's a couple coaches where I just kind of be curious to see how they look competing against their team. Like I want to see Coach Reddy go up against a couple of his players. Like I feel like that I want to see him go up against Tierney. I want to see like a couple of those matchups. I feel like that'd be fun. But yeah, no, like Sam was saying at home, just let us know what you think. If we got it wrong, if we got it right, or just any other ideas we didn't think of. But quickly before we sign off, I'll give you a quick list of what's going on this weekend. So there's a couple invitationals going on at Hopkins/Loyola, and but at home we have baseball, and I believe that's it for home since softball got postponed. Men's lacrosse is at Ursinus. Women's tennis is playing is at Ursinus. Men's tennis is at Ursinus, and then women's lacrosse is also at Ursinus.
All right. Well, that'll do it for this edition of Speak of the Devils podcast. I want to thank my co-hosts, Sammy St. Jean and Dom Fusco. Big shout out to the Grazery, and big shout out to Justin for editing this up and throwing it up on the social media stuff. Roll Devs.